in terms of what's coming out from the White House, they haven't, I would say, been in terms of putting out, the emails with the talking points. Obviously, Caroline Levitt in the press briefing discussed the CR, but they have not been as forceful with the messaging with the Senate component of the STOPS DOGE funding. But the left-wing activists are certainly very forceful in their messaging on it.
Have you seen any additional activity? Normally, when we would have these the threat of the shutdowns, you have Russ vote, you have OMB. They're working through what we call waterfalls, how cash comes in, who are the people that have to be there, the emergency people, who are the necessary people. They're doing triage and really going through it. I know Doge is obviously doing their own independent assessment of folks and kind of this audit. But do you get any activity? There's any late night work on the White House, or they seem to be fairly complacent about this?
Well, look, Secretary Besson obviously did that brief press gaggle this morning. I think he's been doing a lot more media. Even Secretary Navarro yesterday took some questions, was doing a lot of interviews about more broadly the economic stuff, but that's, of course, inextricably linked to the shutdown stuff. To be honest, I think that it's sort of an interesting messaging framing because we've been hearing, from Democrats for weeks, that you can't shut down the government, all the people that Doge is trying to fire, that they're so essential to the very fabric of this country, right? They've been weaponizing judges across the country to ensure that President Trump's efforts to dismantle the federal government can't actually be executed. But now you're essentially, I think, hearing the inverse of that, right? They're now essentially arguing for a shutdown in the name of politics. So I think that the White House, from my estimations, is just sort of letting them duke out the messaging front, in part because it's kind of contrary to everything that they've been pushing against Doge. But they've also been, frankly, Steve, doing a really horrific job on messaging. Not just, I think we saw the first kind of examples of this during the response to President Trump's joint session address. But these members of the Senate are just putting out copy and paste verbatim the same responses, right? And maybe the U.S. aid money dried up, but their efforts to push back are really insufficient. So I think maybe the White House does not feel as if they have to push back with such brute force.
Natalie, we stay right there. I got a lot more to go through. Today, the White House was an action center on many fronts. We're going to go back to the White House, but big breaking news. Let's go. We have a clip to introduce Julie Kelly. As I told you this morning, the federal judiciary insurrection against President Trump continues, but they're ratcheting up the scale of this. Pretty breathtaking. Let's go ahead and play it.
Breaking news, a federal judge is ordering the Trump administration to reinstate the jobs of thousands of probationary employees that they fired just last month. Now, this preliminary injunction applies to the Departments of Veterans Affairs, Agriculture, Defense, Energy, Interior, and Treasury. CNN's Paula Reed is on this story. Paula, that's a lot.
That is a lot. This happened just moments ago, and the judge, a Clinton appointee, said he was making this ruling because he believes the Office of Personnel Management unlawfully directed the agencies earlier this year to lay off probationary employees. As you may remember, this hearing was supposed to feature testimony from the director of the Office of Personnel Management. He would have faced probably pretty tough questions from lawyers representing unions, but the Justice Department decided not to make him available and also withdrew a declaration that he made last week about these firings. And let me tell you, Dan, we've been listening to this hearing in San Francisco. The judge was not pleased. He said, quote, "You're afraid to have this person testify because you know cross-examination will reveal the truth. I tend to doubt that you're telling me the truth." The judge went on to say, "You're not helping me get at the truth. You're giving me press releases, sham documents," referring to documents submitted by the Justice Department to the courts. Now, going forward, the judge has ordered that another senior advisor at the Office of Personnel Management be deposed. So these lawyers are going to have the opportunity to question that senior advisor. And the judge said he wants someone from this agency to go under oath and to finally tell the truth about exactly what happened with these firings. Now, the judge also anticipated that this ruling today will likely be appealed. He said, "If you want to do that, quote, God bless you." But he says that he wants to get to the bottom of exactly what happened with these firings. So in the next 2 weeks, we expect the senior leader at OPM could be deposed, depending on what happens with the appeal.
Yeah, this is a very, very big development. And real quick, before I let you go, given that, do we have any sense of whether or not this ruling today could impact what we were just talking about earlier in the show, which is that there are more layoffs expected very soon?
I think it would depend what specifically those layoffs are targeting. Here we're talking about probationary employees at specific agencies, but I'm sure that lawyers at the White House, at the Justice Department, they are going to look at what the judge said today, decide if they want to appeal, because again, another thing they don't want is an unfavorable ruling on appeal. So I'm sure this is going to factor into their considerations, but we know, Dana, they have lost several cases, they have won many cases, and they continue to try to call the size of the federal government through any means necessary.
Yeah, I sure do. Thank you so much.
Stunning development, not just the scale of this decision, but also basically the dressing down the judge gave of the government. We got about 30 seconds. Julie, tell me what you think. We're going to hold you through the break. This was pretty stunning, man.
It really is, and this is just an escalation of what we see federal judges doing in other jurisdictions, particularly Washington, D.C., actively undermining the president's authority and his policy agenda to significantly reduce the federal workforce. And you have labor unions and other democratic interest groups who are suing the president and his administration, and these federal judges, including this 80-year-old Clinton-appointed judge in San Francisco, only too happy to go along with this.
Absolutely stunning. We're going to hold Julie Kelly. A lot more to go to on the federal judiciary insurrection. I told you it's an insurrection. But challenging directly the power of the President of the United States to make executive decisions as Chief Executive Officer of the United States government. Thought that was in the Constitution. Short commercial break. Going to go back to Julie Kelly.